disruptive ideas on the table, and they over time become mainstream. And there's an enormous respect for people who can hold their own. You know, it's easy to put a disruptive idea on the table. It's very difficult to hold your own when, you know, when the people who don't like that idea attack you, because that's how it's a battle of ideas. And here is Naveen, who can hold his own in any of those situations. And I think in more areas than I think, you know, I've seen anybody else do in this space. And part of the reason is, at his core, he is still an entrepreneur. And he's an entrepreneur turned academic. I feel we will look back a few years from now, and when we think of a person of Indian origin who has stepped in and become the C.K. Prahlad of our era, I will put my money on Vivek. I think, Vivek, you are going to be that person. So here is a big fan of yours, requesting you to come forward on the stage and take the session forward. Thank you so much.
My rock star friend, Naveen Jain. Naveen was probably one of the first Indians to make it big in Silicon Valley in the tech field. I mean, he was a rock star of the dot-com era. He founded InfoSpace. At one stage, he was on the Forbes list of the richest people in America, multi-billionaire. And then, you know, when the dot-com bubble burst, like everyone else, he went from being a rock star to being a rock, right? But since then, he's reinvented himself again. I mean, he built Intellius, and he's also done something which no other Indian has done. He's branched out into the mainstream. Now, I might be a little bit extreme here. I mean, when you say mainstream, you normally think about you know, doing different types of companies. He decided he wants to go to the moon. So he's now investing in a company called Moon Express. He's the chairman of Moon Express. Literally, they're building a lunar lander to go and mine the moon. And then he decided he wants to do space flight, so he's now got 2 tickets on the Virgin Galactic. And I won't tell stories about how much money he spent on that. I was there with him when he auctioned for it. But that's Naveen Jain. I mean, in every area, he's been reinventing himself, challenging the status quo, and going where no one has gone before. So why don't you join me, and we'll battle it out. So Naveen, first let's talk about the lessons which all of us here go through all the time, failure. Because I talked about you going from being a rock star to being a rock. Yeah. To tell us about it. What did that feel like, and what did you learn from that?
Well, in some sense, you know, you never feel the failure is something that ever happens. And I really believe that if you define, before you can define failure, you have to define what success is. In my opinion, success is not about how much money you have in the bank, but actually how many people's life you can impact positively. And if that is really your definition of success, I have never failed. In fact, my success from in the last 10 years has nothing but been extremely successful. So in my opinion, I feel that today I'm in a better position and doing more things that are able to impact hundreds of millions of people's lives. Doing the things in a way that has never been done before. Because you have, if you want to make things work, where you want to help hundreds of millions of people, you have to think about the world very, very differently. You can't be looking at a problem as an infrastructure problem, because that requires a lot of efforts. So I feel that you have to really look at the problem, infrastructure problem, convert that into a knowledge problem. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about innovation in my 530 thing, so I'm going to you know, not discuss as much in detail here. But life as an entrepreneur is something we all have to get used to it. What is an entrepreneur as such? An entrepreneur is not somebody who actually starts a company. Entrepreneur is somebody who actually solves a problem. It becomes all about execution. It's a state of mind. When you see a problem, when you think of a solution and you go out and execute on a solution, then you become an entrepreneur. What I mean by that is, person who sees the problem is just a human being. Person who finds a solution is a visionary, and person who goes out and does something about it is an entrepreneur. So you all have a potential to be an entrepreneur, whether you're inside the company or outside the company. And my hats off to you for all the entrepreneurs here in India.
Okay, you know, you and I have been meeting a bunch of entrepreneurs locally. In my talk yesterday, I talked about mentorship being the #1 problem. What's your view? What have you seen missing over here?
I really think there's tremendous amount of smart people in India, and in fact, I'm just amazed to see not only the great ideas, the passion, and really opportunities that exist in India. what is really lacking is people are constantly reinventing the wheel. They're going through and making the same mistakes again and again that the people before them have made. So I really think you're absolutely right. The biggest change that we really need to create in India is create an ecosystem where the people who have been successful devote their life to helping the people forward. There is nobody in life has ever succeeded, ever, without the help of the society. And the people who are successful, it's not only their responsibility, it is their obligation to give back. And part of the giving back is helping as many entrepreneurs as they can, because every entrepreneur you can help leverages the amount of difference you can make in the society.
Yeah. You know, between you and I met probably half a dozen companies over here who I could just sit down with for 5 or 10 minutes, go through the strategy, rip it apart, and get them to rethink what they're doing. How do we institutionalize that? How do we fix the problem here? Because you had the same experience, that you sat down with 2 entrepreneurs in the reception area the other day, and you had them rethink everything they were doing. How do we now fix the problem here and get these entrepreneurs that kind of mentorship? Because it's not happening.
So there are a couple of parts of it. One is to really do it on a scalable basis, and the second thing is to do it also on a local basis. On a local basis, you have to be able to create these local clubs where the entrepreneurs meet each other, and the people who have been successful in the past come prize so that they know
How substantial is substantial?
It's very substantial that somebody's life is going to change.
Like $1 million, $2 million?
Yes, yes, it's in millions.
All right, $1 billion. So when are you going to announce that?
So we are currently still designing the prize, because to do a prize, one of the interesting thing you always have to do is to make sure that you are able to measure what the success looks like. That means you have to be able to say, what are the diseases you're going to be diagnosing? How are you going to measure that this device actually is successful in diagnosing or not? But if there are thousands of team applying, how are you going to find a patient? Are you going to create digital patient that essentially are, in some sense, software is diagnosing the other software? Or are you going to really have the teams that are going there to the villages and really doing it? And the second part of it always is the distribution challenge, that even if you were to develop something, how are you going to be able to distribute them into the areas where they're most needed, in the most rural areas?
So to summarize, Naveen is going to be offering $1 million to anyone, hopefully from this room, who can develop a software which will help you predict diseases based on simple sensors. In my talk yesterday, I talked about how hardware is converging and growing exponentially. Sensors are as cheap as anything right now. For example, this Fitbit device that Vinod was talking about, it costs $100 in the United States. The sensors behind that you can probably get for about $5. And you can get them here, even here in Bangalore, if you go to the right places, I'm sure. I don't know where they are, but those sensors are very cheap. So if you want to come up with a solution, if you come up with a solution before he announces it, I'm sure he'll probably write you a check for $1 million.
Well, more than that, I think you should really look at this when he's talking about sensor, this reusable thing, that lab on the chip, or you start to look at the microfluidic technology. It has really come a long way, and I believe we are right at the knee of the curve on the exponential technology, because in the early days of exponentially growing technology, you don't see the technology looks like nothing is happening until you hit the knee of the curve and suddenly it takes off. And I believe we are at that cusp of that, where you will find that many of these sensor technology is coming up, where almost everything in your life is going to be monitored by you. You become the CEO of your own health. You don't have to go to the doctor most of the time, because you'll be able to diagnose the things right sitting at your home. Think about it. It is like a pregnancy test. Think about what it used to be. Now there is a pregnancy test on a stick. Now think about if you have a sensor, you're able to spit on it, you'll be able to cough on it, and it says whether you have a dengue fever, whether you have a malaria, and it has any of these infectious diseases, you're able to diagnose them sitting at your home. That changes the healthcare system. And in that case, all you're really looking for at that point is what are the medicines you need to take, not spending hours and hours in the hospital trying to get the disease diagnosed.
But you remember yesterday I was talking about the advantage that you people have over the Silicon Valley crowd? Most of you have science or engineering backgrounds. Most of you have studied mathematics to a higher level than 99.9% of Americans have. The knowledge of STEM in this room is vastly greater than that in Silicon Valley. Right? So you have the ability now to take your skills and get a jump ahead. Right now, you can get Bluetooth sensors quite cheaply, maybe not $5, maybe $20, $30. You can start adapting them to different things. You can start. What you have to do is take the engineering talent that you have here in Bangalore or Chennai or New Delhi, combine it with the software talent. Combine it with Bluetooth technology. You don't have to wait for the Akash tablet or even buy an iPad. You can get Samsung devices which are about $150. You can take the Kindle and hack that if you want to. You can get $150, $200, or $50 devices, $50 sensors, and start innovating. And trust me, Fitbit is a cool device, but many of you could build that in your sleep. And Fitbit is a very, very high valuation company right now. You could be devising new sensors, new technologies here, using the talent that's already over here, and get a jump up, because that's the next big thing in Silicon Valley. This is what I've been saying yesterday. Forget about stupid social media. Get the jump ahead. And if you're still obsessed with social media, apply these sensors to social media somehow. Figure out a way of connecting these devices to your brains and voice recognition, and talk to your devices and come up with new techniques over here. Don't try to do more of the same. Don't try to do what Silicon Valley is doing. Use the unique skills that Indians have and get the jump ahead. I guarantee you, you can now lead the valley in this innovation, because really, value, there's still, I blame the venture capitalists for it, because they're a bunch of buffoons who keep, jumping on the same bandwagon.
Lemmings.
Lemmings, basically, literally, developing the same stupid technologies over and over again. This is why venture capital as a class has underperformed the stock market. Literally, you could have had a monkey throwing a dart at a board and produce better returns than the VCs produced over the last 15 years. And these are the people that Silicon Valley people worship, the gods of Silicon Valley, who everyone looks up to. So don't listen to them. Use your unique strengths over here and get the next leg up. Don't try to imitate what Silicon Valley is doing, get the leg up. The technologies that Naveen is talking about, the digital doctor is talking about, you can build it right now. And actually, I know Naveen well enough that if you came to him 6 months from now, while he is trying to come up with the requirements, says, look, I've built this device, here's how it works, here's how I've tested it, and you could build a device like that within 6 months, he will write you a check for $1 million. I know this guy well enough to know that that would happen. But those are the opportunities that are available to you. Why don't you get the leg up here and build these new technologies?
So, in some sense, I agree with Vivek, but you have to always go beyond looking for developing the technology. You always have to focus on saying, what are the problems I'm trying to solve? What are the pain points that people have that I'm trying to solve? And I think one of the interesting things is that, today the healthcare is dominated by pharmaceutical companies or even biotech companies. But the day you are able to sequence every genome, you're able to sequence every proteome, you're able to sequence the connectome, the world changes. The problem is no longer the health problem, the problem becomes a big data problem. Because now once you have everybody's genome, everybody's proteome, and everybody's connectome, you're able to essentially do a statistical regression analysis to see these genes, this protein, this connection causes this disease. And now think about it, you can build a whole kinds of social media around it and say, what did you do when you had this to solve your problem? And you're still essentially able to find a lot of the things that people are doing who are just like you. They have the same genome, the same proteomes, and same connectomes, and are able to find a solution for themselves. So you'll be able to find that the healthcare fundamentally changes from becoming the disease care into actually the healthcare system. Today we cure the diseases, we don't provide health. To provide the healthcare system, you have to be constantly monitoring your body, as your sweat, your pulse. I mean, you can have a device that is constantly monitoring everything you're doing. And it's able to tell you when there is a slight change in your body. And it tells you that, this is what's happening inside your body, and you're able to manage that. So you become, as I say, the CEO of your own health. And that changes the game. Is you're no longer dependent on some expert telling you that you have a problem, because you're able to detect the change yourself. And think big. Think these problems these are not unsolvable problems. These are all very solvable problems.
I'll tell you how simple it is. Your scales right now. You could take the scales and attach a Bluetooth sensor to it, which feeds into your iPhone app, and which now connects to your blood. Again, you take some blood detection units, connect a Bluetooth sensor to that, and now put those together, and suddenly you have a new type of device which monitors your weight, and maybe you put another sensor in your fridge, which monitors how much ras malai you had, or jalebis you had, or something like that, and
well, you don't have to. You'll be a sensor right on your body to say, actually, you're eating way too much.
Right. But all of these technologies are available now. DNA sequencing, it's $10,000 or so right now. Within the next 2 or 3 years, it's down to less than $1,000. Within 5 years, it's down to $100. So you can get entire DNA sequences right now. You folks can be developing solutions using for DNA right now by downloading some DNA from the web and studying up on it. You don't have to be building the same things again. You can be solving tomorrow's problems today and get a 5-year head start on the rest of the industry. You can lead the industry right now.
You're absolutely correct, especially given the billion people in this country. And whether you look at a company like 23andMe, most of the things are very Caucasian-based. So you essentially don't have enough of the samples of the people from India to be able to find what is an average. So before they can say your thing is above average or below average, they have to know what the average is. And I really think if you're able to start something like that, even if it's not a full sequence, genome sequence, you're able to at least get the most common things and find the differences and really create that mechanism to say what, as an Indian population or even the local area, what are the gene sequences that are common, what are the genes that are common, what are the things in terms of proteins, which is really the next big things, because at the end of the day, the DNA only tells you what you're going to do. RNA is the one that converts the genomes into proteomes. So we really ultimately have to look at the proteomes to be able to go see and saying how body is going to react to a particular gene.
Yeah, partial genome sequencing costs a few $100s right now. You can get
Not even that.
Yeah, you can get cheap little kits which do that right now. And if you solve the problem in India, you're talking about the single largest market in the world, because in America itself, healthcare is what percent of the economy is it? I mean,
Very large.
Yeah,
20% plus of the economy.
yeah, you're talking about a $2 to $3 trillion market that you can be penetrating. And again, when you're developing, a lot of you folks try developing applications here, hoping that you can conquer the American market. All of the people I've met so far here who've been trying to develop applications for America, I tell them to get a day job. Forget it, you're not going to succeed because you don't understand the market. When it comes to health, health is the same. Your health is no different than the health of an American is. Your DNA is slightly different, but if you can solve those problems, you now have access to the single largest market in the world, which applies to every country, every human being, and it's the same technology. You can own that space if you do it.
So Vivek, how would you think that the people who are developing great technologies in India, how are they able to, if they want to distribute their stuff, say in US, because they really don't understand the US market or really be able to penetrate the US market, are there ways you can do that?
Well, not easily. This is why what Pangea is doing. I mean, Johnson Shiftman is here looking for some great technologies to take to America. If the white guy sitting over there.
Jonathan, stand up.
Stand up, will you? If you have some technologies which you think are applicable to America, seek him out. But there's one of him. So the likelihood of you being able to market in America is close to zero. My advice to most Indians is don't even bother. Solve the problems of India. And if you're really successful here, it might make sense to go to the USA, but I wouldn't advise them to do it. Okay. I want to shift gears altogether. Now let's talk about big data. Okay. You have the biggest big data company in America, and India has the biggest big data project in the world. Aadhaar, is going to change India. I'm really surprised at how much ignorance there is in Bangalore about this project, because this project, this Aadhaar, has not been publicized, and it's almost been kept hush-hush by the people behind it because they were afraid of a backlash. They wanted to sneak it under the scanner here, but it was designed here in your local community. Already 100 million people are going to be ID'd. Within the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to have a billion people database of information about people. So the opportunities for you to build applications is mind-blowing over here. Talk about big data and tell me about what you did, because Naveen has built a $150 million company and just analyzing old data, not even the type of data that's available here. What do you see as the opportunities over here?
So I think that, it's interestingly is that it's not the data in itself that helps you solve big problems. Once you connect the people and their information, you're able to do things that you never thought were possible before. So if you can take a person, what I think UDID is doing is simply providing a basic information about the person. The next thing is you really have to take the information in the world, whether it's a web information, whether it's a professional information, all of the information in the world, make it people-centric. Once you're able to connect people and their information, whether now you can do, whether it's authentication, you're able to get a complete picture of that person, and you say, can I now solve the problems, not only who knows who, but who knows what? You are able to solve problems by using the data, by analyzing the data in a different way, and you're able to come up with a totally different market from the same set of data. You're able to predict many of the things that were never possible before. You're going to be able to find the connections between people that are not even obvious on the surface or even looking slightly more deeper, because the people can be connected through many ways because they used to work at the same companies at different times. They may be connected because they were all living in the same area at some point of time. So you're able to find the connections between people. You're going to find between the people and their expertise, and you're able to do things that were never possible before. And that's, Vivek, what we're doing at Intellius really is connecting people with their information. And we are able to solve the problem of identity authentication. We're able to find now ways of doing things that were never possible before.
Well, let's leak some more to them. You and I were talking over drinks about doing a contest for Bangalore developers, actually for Indian developers, to build on top of an API that your company is releasing. Talk about that.
So, our thought has always been...
He was talking about 50 lakh rupees for that, by the way, so that he's not going to mention it, but that's the price he's talking about. But talk about what you have in mind there.
So our thought has been is that now that you have access to all the people and their information, what are the applications we can build to solve different problems? Because at the end of the day, we are not the smartest people. Not all solutions and applications are going to come from us. So we wanted to open up the complete API and allow people to start thinking about building tremendous set of applications on top of that. You own the company, you build the application, we provide the underlying connections. And my hope is that if you build clever applications, not only you will create a great company, you will help us create a great company for ourselves. So my hope is that we have something called even a live family, where we are able to tell you how people are not only connected, but what their relationship is. So we can tell you he is a brother versus he is a cousin. He is an uncle versus he is a person who you know, but because you used to work at the same place, right? So yet once you know those type of connections, you can come up with some very, very clever applications, and we were going to launch a prize for application, and I think there are going to be a whole lot more details about that available by the end of the year, and about what are the applications you can think cleverly about applications to build on top of these API, and there's going to be some decent prizes for that.
Let me translate a little bit more. So what Intellius does is it provides you with, this is for the American market right now. And Naveen is thinking of bringing it to the Indian market as well, but for those of you who want to build for American market, the opportunity is that he will open up the API to the big data of America to it's a select group of developers. It's going to be opened up in beta, and you'll be able to build applications on top of that. The top 2 or 3 applications will be marketed by his company. First, he'll give you a hefty check so that you're fat and happy, and then he'll market your technologies in the West for you. So that's what he plans to announce. I think you should stay tuned on that.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Please go ahead.
You want to add anything?
No, simply saying that also trying to bring that same concept to India, really creating some Intellius India here to be able to take advantage of a lot of the big data that exists in India and really build a company around that.
But again, if you add a heart to that, now you've got a killer application. You can now, because the identity systems are becoming pervasive all over the world. Aadhaar just happens to be way ahead, many years ahead of everything else in the world. If you can somehow conquer this big data thing and now build people-oriented applications over here, you'll be able to export them to other countries and really, again, make it big. You can build a Google-class company from India itself, with India as a base, expanding into other geographies if you get the jump start on doing these things. And the cost is very low, because that's the beauty of building these type of applications. You can build them on tablet-like devices, and with open APIs and so on. Gone are the days when you would have to spend $100,000 just to get the hardware to start a company. Now you can do it for $100. And again, people, and this is what Naveen and I have been talking quite a bit about it over drinks for the last few days, that we want to open up opportunities for Bangalore developers. How do we now get you people involved in the global economy? How do you get you to solving American problems? That's when Naveen said, let's open this API up to people over here first, and give them a head start and let them build the applications for my stuff, then I'll promote them in America. So stay tuned on that front. Okay. We have 22 minutes left. Let's do some open Q&A. Okay. Questions? Yes. I mean, big data and recruitment.
Yes. So ultimately, think about what is the problem of recruitment. You're trying to match people and expertise. So there is a requirement that people have in terms of what are the things they need for the job. And here you have people who have some expertise, and your job really is at that point is to match, to say how you can perfectly match the requirement of a job with the requirement of a person. So it is really a same big data analysis problem. Yes.
Question?
If you could talk a little more about the space exploration and Moon Express and so on. I mean, it's a wide.
Don't get him started, please. I was trying to get him off that topic.
No, because, it seems like deep diving into space or into the human body seems to be like the two new wild west areas out there. So just want to know your views on what you thought.
So I think if you ask me that, one of the good things have been that I have been just very fortunate that we have been able to identify the big trends. When I started InfoSpace, our thing was, think about now 15 years ago, that we thought that people will be using cell phones not just for the voice. 15 years ago, people will be only using the email, the contact, the calendar. People used to carry Palm Pilot and cell phones. I said, no, one day they're going to all merge together. People are going to be getting the coupons on their cell phones. And we built a company around that. We were way ahead of our time. And we were very well rewarded for hitting the trend right. Similarly, on the Intellius, we got the trend right, where we say, everybody told me 7 years ago, information on the internet wants to be free. Everything on the information, people will never pay for information. My belief was, it is not the information people will pay for, but people will pay for a solution. If you can find the pain point and you can solve the pain point, people will pay to solve the pain. People always pay to solve the pain, right? Similarly, I believe if you ask me in the next 7 to 10 years, the biggest industry, the biggest companies are going to be created in two areas, genetics and space exploration. I believe if you want to make mega bucks, you really think about solving big problems. Big problems are going to be, especially today, that our problems are education, healthcare, but you also start to think about the genetics and the space exploration. And you will find that ultimately our society is going to become multiplanetary society. So what I did is I started a company called Moon Express, where we are taking not only the system and resources from Earth to Moon, but also bringing back from Moon to Earth things like platinum and things like helium-3. Because if you are able to use helium-3 for fusion energy, the beauty of the helium-3 isotope is non-radioactive. So you're able to create a fusion energy without ever having to have a radioactive waste.
Thank you. Both of you have spoken passionately about opportunities in healthcare. I was wondering if you had any thoughts in the agricultural sector here in India.
I think it's a huge opportunity, but I don't know that sector.
Okay. So ultimately, if you start to think about agriculture, there's several problems in the agriculture. One is how do you improve the productivity of that sector? And secondly, one of the biggest reasons the agriculture to grow is the water. And agriculture uses 70% of all clean water. The non-salt water is used for agriculture. If you can somehow find a way to change, genetically modify the seed to use the salt water, it changes the game. So you have to always think about the problem in a different way. How do you create abundance, not worry about how do you use less of it? So, when you talk about sustainability, most people who believe in sustainability always talk about conservation, and they never talk about creation. To me, the sustainability is created by, if you think about creation rather than conservation, you will do well.
Hello, I'm Nishit Sahaya. I live in Greater Washington area. And I have a comment for you. Really thanks that you have raised the question that the most respected person in Bangalore is not giving away, like Mr. Narayan Murthy and so. And I've been invited by Vinod Gupta Institute in Kharagpur, it was 7 years back. And I was really surprised, and I had the same thought in my mind. And I asked the director, about 10 years after that, I was visiting Kharagpur, and I saw the same railway station, no development, nothing else. And I asked, what is the social responsibility of IITs? There were 4 or 5 IIM's director, IIT director. He said, no, Mr. Sahai, all of our students get job in America. So we need to solve that problem. And second thing, my question to you is that, how you think that the public policy affects a country's entrepreneurship?
You want?
Okay, so, in some sense, most colleges, if they are focused on creating entrepreneurs rather than creating jobs, I really think if you can create a mindset of every college student, they think like an entrepreneur, whether they work for a big company or they work for themselves, they really can make a difference. That means anytime they see a problem, they always execute on that solution. So I really believe that a responsibility of IITs is not to send people to US. In fact, Vivek knows of many people who have been in US and now they have come back to India because they believe the opportunities in India are greater than the opportunities in US. Because in some sense, US is always the Fed. There are lemmings out there. You build one company that's successful, and there are going to be hundreds and thousands of these companies come out, and every damn VC wants to fund these things because they want to say, we are working on this area. So point is, I think in India, all of us have a tremendous advantage here, is to be able to, on a scale, US is only 300 million people. The size of the population here is 1.4 billion now, right? If it's that kind of population, even if you think about that, you can only make a small amount of money from each person here. There is a massive amount of market. If you can even make $1 per year, that's, think about 8 cents per month from each person, you have a massive amount of revenue and scale that you can create here.
So what's the role of the government? What government needs to do is get out of the way of entrepreneurs. The more government you have, the more corruption you have. And if you look at the success of India, everywhere the government hasn't been, starting with IT, telecom, airlines, wherever the government hasn't been, you have the greatest successes. Infrastructure, who's building the infrastructure? Not the government. Look at the mess outside over here. That's what happens when you have government involved. You need private industry to do it. So the best thing to do is to cut this, this government down to shreds. Give the politicians some, black money. Keep them happy, but get them out of the way of the people, and this country will thrive. Right.
You mentioned about, to solve the problem, you typically need someone who's outside, who doesn't know about the problem. So everyone, I think, is like have a mindset to solve that kind of a narrow mindset. How do you actually come out of that to go and solve the bigger problems? Like, how did you do it, rather than?
Naveen, you answer this one.
Okay. So if I understand your question correctly, you're saying is how do you find the people who are outside your industry?
No,
or
how do you start thinking outside the box?
Oh, I see. Well, so first of all, there is no, I think this is a term that people talk about, inside the box or outside the box. I really don't think there's anybody who lives inside the box, right? I think we have a mindset, and the mindset gets created because we see people doing it in a certain way. That's what creates a mindset. But when you're looking at the problem from outside in, all you see is the problem, and you say, what? I don't know anything about this area. How would you go about solving a problem? Because you have a clean slate. And I think having a clean slate and no expertise, it gives you a canvas that you can create any image you want on top of that, which is the most creative companies are created because people just don't know what is it that they want. And they have a clean canvas, and they have imagination, and you paint what you want to paint on.
My response is challenge authority, challenge the norms. Don't, be fearless. No one is more competent than you are. What I realized is that every area I've touched, I've been able to, like when I joined academia, I took on the biggest name academics, people who are worshipped as gods, ripped their heads off, and they haven't been able to respond to me. For example, Michael Porter, one of the greatest gurus out there. I've talked publicly about his theories being scam. This whole cluster theory and so on. He hasn't dared take me on. So you can take on the biggest names out there. You'll be surprised how insecure they are, how incompetent they are. And you can thrive in anything you want to.
I'm Sunil. My question is around holistic child development, including health and nutrition, which includes the pain points are non-universalization of quality learning from K to 12 and underutilization of the human capital. So the education in India, every child is not getting complete education for all-round development. I have a startup idea. I've been associated with a large non-profit who is into school education. So how can we take it forward with you?
To be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what the question is.
I don't understand the question either.
Yeah, the school education is in a big mess. The public school education, the government system of education, where the 70% of population is going. The private education is only 30%.
Look, the solution to education is to rethink it completely, using new methods of learning. Naveen has talked about using neuroscience to change the way you educate. In India, what we have to, there's no way we're going to have enough teachers to train 200 million children that need to be educated. We need to start using technology. This is why I've been supporting the Akash device. And everyone else, I wrote about it. I've been talking about it very positively, and people in India have been attacking me left, right, and center because you have Kapil Sibal who's behind it. Yeah, I know that he and all his cronies are crooks, but the fact is that the concept still makes sense. The fact is that it's now letting loose a major revolution because it's going to force a price point of these devices to come down, and it's going to cause entrepreneurs to step in and develop new solutions. You know, the head of Google India, Prasad Ram, went back and he started a company called Ednovo, a product called Goru, G-O-R-U. What they're doing is that they're providing a platform for education. So you can take lessons from anywhere, whether it be on video, whether it be you know, PowerPoints and so on, and string them together using different techniques. Well, that, I mean, he's providing one platform, the other people are providing different platforms. What you folks can be doing is looking at those things, coming up with your own platforms, and coming up with ways of educating these children over here that need to be educated. Assume that in the next 2 years, they'll be able to get devices, they'll be able to get internet access, and you'll be able to change the paradigm. How are you going to re-educate these kids? How are you now going to give them the same advantages that the most advanced countries have?
So therefore,
let's pass the mic to some of the people in the back. There are a lot of people.
Could I ask a question? Quick.
Why don't you just speak in the back? Why don't you just speak?
Sure. Yeah. So I just graduated recently from IIT Kanpur with a majoring in computer science. I closely follow your blog and the startup visa and the other activity that is going on around it. As a recent engineering graduate, I often face a question in my mind, as to whether I should think about doing a startup in India, or whether I should think about going to the US and doing a startup there. My question is for recent graduates, like engineering graduates, for whom oftentimes the only comparative advantage that they have over other entrepreneurs is just the understanding of technology, and we would really have little experience or networks. Do you think an American technology ecosystem is better positioned for our efforts in comparison to India?
There's nothing like Silicon Valley. It's a dream to get there. You have no hope of getting a visa. And even if you get there on a temporary visa by working for one of the crappy outsourcing companies, you won't be able to get a green card to start a company there. So don't even dream about it. I mean, the best you can do is to connect with the ecosystem over here, meet up with other developers, start helping each other. And there's nothing stopping you from succeeding. I mean, you have the knowledge over here. Approach seasoned people. Fine, Narayan Murthy is not giving back, but there are probably hundreds of other people who have achieved success who will give back. The people, people like Naveen Jain here also, who are ready, who made their fortunes, who have achieved a lot of success, who are happy to help others. Approach them, ask them for help, and then help each other. I mean, you don't need Ankur Jain coming here and setting up Kairos. And in fact, he might well do that if you really, push him, right? If, Google him, find him, and ask Ankur to set up a Kairos event over here in which you get hundreds of entrepreneurs from all over the world coming and mentoring you people. But I'm saying you don't need Ankur for that. You can probably do it yourselves by getting together and just replicating the formula.
Well, Vivek, the time is up now, and
concluding thoughts. This is your show.
Well, it's your show. I think concluding
You're the rock
thoughts.
star.
Well, we are together rock stars, and I'm a rock and he's a star. That's how it works. But thank you very much for being here, and look forward to continuing our discussion at 5:30. So look forward to seeing all of you there.
Thank you so much, and a small token of appreciation from our organizing team.
Uh-oh. Thank you. Thank you, Sharad. And Vivek.
Of course, Vivek.
Great, thank you.
Maybe we should have a quick photograph.
All right.
Absolutely.
If we have a photographer.
Do we have a photographer over here? iPhone cameras, tweet pics.
They have that camera there. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi.